want to welcome to Digitising Europe, Opportunities for the Next Generation, to our summit here in Berlin. And I'm here with Sasha Havlicek, who's the CEO of the Institute for Strategic Dialogue in London. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you so much, David.
Sasha, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue has just published a report called Europe's Got Talent. It's really about the question, what has to happen to unfold this potential for growth and also for opportunities and new employment opportunities for the next generation. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the key findings of that interview-based report and how it was produced?
Absolutely, David, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Europe's Got Talent is about the potential that we have and that we're not reaping at this point in time. And so we were looking in some sense at the three pillars of the digital economy: education, learning, of course, absolutely central. We know that we have a massive skills gap, but it's not just a skills gap, it's a motivational gap. Young people are sort of interested in this area, but really not aiming at going into the digital sector in the ways that we need. And we have a huge amount of jobs in this space that require filling and are not delivering the skills that we currently need. We're looking at it from the perspective of education, from the perspective of changes that we need to see happening in the workplace. This digital generation, digital natives, have very different expectations of their life, their work, the way in which they structure the two together. And so innovation is going to require workplaces to think and to collaborate across generations in terms of finding new hierarchies, new patterns of work together. And thirdly, looking at the business operating environment. Essentially, this is placed against the backdrop of challenges that we face, I think, across the board in Europe in terms of promoting entrepreneurship, promoting startups. We know that startups in Europe fare less well than their counterparts in America, and there are a number of reasons for that we propose solutions to.
Could you give an example how the kind of regulatory environment could be improved for startups?
I mean, all sorts of things. I mean, I think that there's a regulatory piece of this challenge, and then there's a practical piece of the challenge. Support to startup, both in terms of investment, seed investment and capital, in terms of reducing risk for investors, in terms of reducing certain tax burdens on startups, but also in terms of capacity. So really looking at innovation hubs and accelerators to provide support for early startups so that they can share know-how and expertise, as well as obviously being provided the regulatory environment that's needed.
We talked so much today about different perceptions and different styles of work, different expectations of the workplace. I mean, you convene a lot. You know, the ISD is a great think tank, bringing people together on the table who maybe usually wouldn't talk to each other, policymakers, the senior leaders, but also the younger generation. When you look at the kind of the two generations, say the kind of 18 to 30-year-old, and then the older generation who are now in these leadership positions, what would you think is the main or the most striking difference in the way they work or approach problems? I mean, you know, the kind of mentality change or something like this is.
I mean, I think there's a whole range of differences. I think that young people, their work trajectories are going to be very, very different from their parents' generation, and their expectations are different from a number of perspectives. I think actually quite interesting coming out of the survey that was done was the extent to which the life-work balance is central to the way in which young people are viewing their careers. Actually, the digital economy enables a kind of flexibility that perhaps wasn't possible in most sectors earlier on. And a flatter environment is what people expect. I think the big shift in terms of the way we organize ourselves is going to be a rethinking of hierarchy. And that is on a number of fronts. So ageism is a challenge in Europe in the sense that actually seniority is correlated in general with age. That has to be completely upended because the technological capacity is coming from the younger generations, and they're going to need to work across generations in a much more flexible, flat structure if we're going to get the innovation out of business that we really need. Interestingly, diversity matters. We found that women tend to have a better track record working across generations, understanding the young in the work environment. And so again, a good example of why diversity is important.
Maybe just in a nutshell, what do you think is really the kind of nucleus message for younger people? What should they do to get ready? If you would just put it in a couple of sentences, what would you, based on that report, advise to young people to get ready for the world of tomorrow?
I think that actually one of the things that came out of the research was the extent to which actually there's a lack of knowledge of the IT sector. Of the ICT sector as a whole. And I would say to young people that this is a space that offers opportunity for creativity and great opportunity in terms of employment at a time when we have massively high unemployment. I think that there's a job to be done by young people, of course, in collaboration with educational institutions and companies. Companies, I think, have a major role to play here in providing more information about what is on offer in this space. But young people need to be researching and looking at what's actually possible in this space. I think the one thing I would say is that there is too little entrepreneurial spirit in Europe, full stop, among the young. In Italy and in Spain, you saw that respondents said that they would very much like to start their businesses, but that was in a negative light. It was because there was nothing else on offer. Jobs, other career paths were somehow not on offer. And so they were looking at entrepreneurship as a last resort, as opposed to as an aspirational avenue. That, I think, would be a very different picture if we were to ask those same questions in America or indeed in Asia. So I would say entrepreneurship is absolutely critical, and this generation needs to be much, much more aware of the opportunities in entrepreneurship as a whole and in ICT in particular.
Sasha, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.